So Ben, you used to live there in California in Chico, and now you're out here in Missoula. What brought you out here?
I went up to the Stikine River for Eric Seymour's 40th birthday, and that's the guy who taught me how to roll in college. So it was a pretty epic place to go celebrate. I guess it was both of our 20 years kayaking or 20 some years kayaking. We came back down, and one of the other team members, Aaron Pruzan, knew a girl in Missoula named Cheyenne Rogers. So we stopped here on our way back down to Jackson Hole, and we immediately fell madly in love. And then it wasn't not even 6 months later I moved directly to Missoula. I was like, no long distance relationship. I didn't really have too many thoughts about what I was leaving behind in the Sierra Nevada, which are some of my favorite rivers anywhere on earth. But I knew that there were a few nice rivers up here, and I had just seen the South Fork of the Salmon for the very first time, and I had shown some of the no big names, some of the Hotel Charlies in Missoula back in the day. So I'd had some good enough experiences in this neck of the woods to know that this is a pretty nice place. But I had no idea Missoula is a paddling town, and there's not nearly enough kayakers that live here, but I guess that's a good thing. That's a big selling point. Lots of room in the eddies.
How was it for you doing a full-length film after all these years that was expedition-based with kind of the change in media or landscape over the last 5-10 years?
Yeah, this film kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't anticipating making a feature film. I had started boating with Lane Jacobs principally in 2016, right after Rolf Ortiz got married. I met up with Lane Jacobs. I hadn't seen him in years, and he's like, I'm going to Colombia after this. You want to join? I'm like, well, I had the time to do it. And so I had done several trips now with Lane to Colombia, both of them with Jules Domin as well. And we'd had amazing experiences. I kept wanting to go back, but it wasn't something that I felt like I needed to spend hundreds of hours of my life in terms of producing some kind of a documentary. And this particular adventure with Lane again, and this time with Rolf Ortiz, was just not only was the river legendary and one that I wanted to share with the community, was this first descent that we did down the bottom section of the Rio Guayas, but the encounter that we had with the indigenous people, with the locals, some coke growers, community in this far-flung sort of off the beaten path edge of Colombia, Caqueta, Colombia, was it was a story that, we felt like we had to tell it, so Lane and Rafa and I worked together to write it down for the Coquetat blog, and then we had all this amazing footage between the three of us shooting images that it was just all there. And then several hundred hours of editing later, it was we put it up for the first showing, and it still hasn't gone totally public yet, so definitely keeping my fingers crossed that this Return to El Guayas goes and gets selected by the Banff Film Festival. It's a big hope of mine. They reach millions of outdoor enthusiasts. So yeah, I'm super excited to continue to sort of modify and edit, because it's a complicated story to tell. It's not just trying to showcase the kayaking porn, for lack of a better term, that we got these amazing kayaking experiences on the Guayas, but also a larger context, the story of a place that's in danger, and the story of our encounter with some people that live along the river that are trying to protect it, and we kind of got caught in that crossfire, which made it that much more of a educational experience.
With your most recent mission to Old Man's Creek and everything that went into that, and having a good partner in crime, sustaining an injury on a mission like that, does it make you hesitate at all doing any other big things once you've healed up, or does it change your perspective on how it's going to be getting back into the water post complete recovery at all?
Yeah. Well, I've already had several changes in my expectations play out, from initially thinking maybe I got super lucky and it was going to be a matter of a month or 6 weeks of healing, and now here I am 3.5 months in and realizing that I probably have at least another month to go to be sure that I'm not going to re-injure myself. But I don't think that I can know exactly how it's going to be until I get back into the Class 5 scenario and into, like, you know, I'm pretty sure at this point I could go and run a little wide at 3 feet or some other known quantity, but, like, you know, jack up the flow in the little white or put me on a exploratory mission, and it's just hard to know exactly how my psyche is going to handle it. You know, I know after other incidents in the past, especially the 2 fatalities that I've been a part of on the river, it was, in both cases, it was a process of getting back into it and getting to a place where I wasn't really battling sort of the traumatic PTSD is over the top, but just like getting back to a place where I could really start to fully enjoy it again, or maybe even enjoy pushing my own limits and not just rushing for the portage. But having been on both sides of that spectrum, on both the person who's pushing it and then the person who's pushing to portage first, I feel like I enjoy both aspects of that, and, you know, as long as my body can take it, then yeah, that's where my full mentality has been since day one, was like doing everything, trying to do everything that I could to both, you know, return to the river as quickly as possible, but to return to it as healthy and as strong as possible. And certainly being in Montana with a good partner in Cheyenne and surrounded by such a relatively small group of paddlers, but amazing group of paddlers that have helped me, specifically Kristen Beatty, who's a local paddler in the area, who called me like the day after. She's a physical therapist and told me to come in the day after my injury. And then having seen her once or twice a week ever since then, that's been mind-blowing. And that wasn't something, like, you know, that I got through the traditional healthcare system. It was definitely a very much of a community-based approach, and I feel so lucky to have gone through that.
So back in 2003, we met, and we went on a pretty exciting trip in the fall to Costa Rica, which isn't known for its extreme exploratory boating necessarily. In the past, 10, 20 years, it's kind of, a lot of it's been explored, and when we went down there, I got my ass kicked on that expedition pretty good and realized that maybe exploratory Class 5 boating wasn't my cup of tea, but I still enjoy getting out on Class 5 and getting out on the river and pushing my own limits, but I realized where my limits were. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome to get out on the river and see that type of expedition with you on the river down there in Costa Rica, but I'm kind of curious what keeps bringing you back to go to these far reaches of the earth, and what really piques your interest time and time again and keeps you continuing to push and get out there and get on new unexplored water.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Rio Patria expedition in 2003 was definitely formative in a couple of different ways. There was another person that was in the running or considering going on that trip with us. He decided to bow out, and it ended up just being you, Nick, and Melissa Newell and I. And I mean, we pretty quickly realized we just like had bad beta and limited beta, but I remember specifically that every part of that trip was some kind of challenge, and somehow we were able to laugh our way through each one of those challenges. And I say somehow because at the end of our day one, we're stuck in a tree like 200 feet off the ground, not knowing exactly how we're going to get ourselves out of that situation in the morning, with all of our ropes and all of our gear stuck above us, and absolutely no handholds or any way to get down without the ropes, and yet being able to persevere, being able to just call it off and sit there for 12 or 13 hours with the ants and the lightning, and continually switching places for each person to at least try to like not have to sit upright and balance the whole time. One person could kind of get closest to the wall and then lean out, or I can't remember if it was vice versa, but it wasn't just that. It was like the hike in, I think, was like knee deep mud, and then the 2 more days on the river, it was a lot of rapids, a lot of scouting. Was there a swim at some point? Yeah, and then just like the overwhelming crush of reporters and rescue workers waiting for us at the takeout. I mean, looking back on it, it's pretty humorous, but at the time it was pretty overwhelming. And just to like come together with, I didn't know you that well. I mean, we'd spent some time together, but I certainly didn't know Melissa that well. But just seeing how 3 people could work together, and it wasn't like, you know, one person had to be the hero or one person had to be responsible for leading us into this disaster situation. It seemed at one point or the other, we all kind of took the lead to shift the burden of that trip, and that's definitely that group mentality. It's like I'm really into the dynamic of expedition kayaking and the teamwork that can make these trips not only possible but like pretty enjoyable, even though inevitably every time there is like some level of suffering. But then like over the years I've like come to crave that suffering, because I know that like the other side of that suffering is just like this feeling of accomplishment, and yeah, it's just like, I guess some level of accomplishment and endorphin rush and just camaraderie. It's pretty cool.
What's your take on the state of whitewater kayaking today?
I think it's an exciting time to be a whitewater kayaker, actually. I think we could be on the precipice of the first growth spurt in 2 decades, since the early 2000s, just with people realizing, people being forced into the outdoors as this safe venue from a pandemic, and then also people, once they're forced out there, realizing just how amazing it is out there. So I think that there's an incredible opportunity in growing our sport right now, but also a renewed motivation to make sure that as we grow the sport, we do it with as much education and as much inclusivity as we can, in terms of not only protecting the natural world but inviting people from all communities in, because the state of whitewater kayaking here in the US right now is very male, very white, and I think we could benefit our coalition to protect rivers around the country so much by, at a very minimum, welcoming in the other gender, and ideally welcoming in Native American communities, Black communities, LGBTQ plus queer communities, like just being like, we want you guys to come here, because I really do feel like there's a lot of amazing, welcoming people in our sport, and there's some good examples, but I think we still have a lot of work to do to really open up the doors, and it's more than us just saying come on. There's a whole economic aspect to our sport that is a limiting factor for a lot of communities, but then again, there's no lift ticket. Rivers are much more ubiquitous than ski hills, for example, by contrast, and yeah, I think that there is an opportunity to really grow our sport. But yeah, it is amazing that, like, all over the world in these communities, especially in the third world, how welcoming people are. People that have so little and can be so disdainful towards Americans, they're just not. They're so welcoming. And so yeah, I do look forward to going out into the bigger world someday. But for now, I've been thinking a lot about the Olympic Peninsula. There's this river that Pat Keller showed me one time on Google Earth. I'd love to go poach that river and let him know that I poached him specifically, just for the fun of it. There's nothing better than like poaching someone.
Are there any upcoming expeditions or particular trips that you have coming up that you would want to share or talk about, or that kind of on the secret tip?
I don't know. I think the word's been out for a while on all the trips that I want to do. But, I mean, these days, definitely thinking more about trips within the borders of our own country here, as a lot of places are still off limits with the pandemic. But there are some places that are trying to get people to come out. I know, like, Abe Herrera over in Ecuador is definitely putting out the call for kayakers to show up. And I would love to go and experience Ecuador, especially after paying a little bit more attention to Ecuador through Todd Wells's couple of missions, several missions over there, especially on that Rio Zamora, and then talking directly with Abe and hearing like how incredible it was that they pulled off that river and how many other rivers there are. And yeah, just always having boated quite a few times in the next door neighbor of Colombia and never having boated in Ecuador, I think that would be amazing. But for sure, I'm like still hesitant to go out into the big bad world beyond our own little protected borders and get stuck out there or something. But my experience has always been that these places that seem so much more restricted in a lot of ways are more accepting than the places in our own backyard.